My sister ended up pregnant by my husband after our anniversary trip. When I found out, my brother laughed and said, "Well, she always got what you couldn't." Then my mom asked if I'd help raise the baby like a big sister. I froze. My name is Rena. I'm 38. I live in Portland and I used to think I had a quiet, content life. I married Darren when I was 28. We weren't wild about each other the way movies sell it to you, but we fit. We liked the same routines. We both enjoyed early morning coffee, house projects on weekends, and walks along the Willamette River. I thought that was enough. About a year ago, we hit our 10-year anniversary. It felt like a big milestone, especially considering my parents divorced after 9 years, and my brother's marriage barely lasted 5. I wanted to do something special, bring everyone together. I rented a beach house in Cannon Beach for a long weekend. I invited my siblings, their kids, and my mom. I even told Darren to invite his sister and her family, but they couldn't make it. It was one of those crisp, windy Oregon weekends. Moody skies. The kind where the beach smells like salt and pine needles. The kind of place you'd think people come to reconnect, not shatter things. Looking back, there were little signs. Darren was distant during the trip, but I wrote it off as work stress. He was always checking Slack or coding something. Ivy arrived late, like always, with her oversized scarf and "I don't believe in clocks" energy. She hugged everyone too long, but I was used to that. She was always the one who floated into rooms like a perfume you didn't ask for, just there, lingering. Nothing obvious happened at the house. There was no inappropriate touching, no lingering glances I caught. If anything happened that weekend, it was behind closed doors or in stolen moments I wouldn't have thought twice about. I didn't find out until nearly 2 months later. Ivy called me one evening after work. I was already in my pajamas, trying to unwind. I remember the way her voice shook, but not in a scared way, more like she'd rehearsed what she was going to say 100 times. She told me she was pregnant. My first instinct was to be happy for her. Ivy had always said she wasn't sure she wanted kids, but maybe she'd changed her mind. I congratulated her automatically, and then she went quiet. "It's Darren's." I laughed at first. I thought it was some bad joke. But she didn't laugh. She just breathed into the phone like she was waiting for me to help her make it okay. I hung up. I don't even remember how I confronted Darren. It's a blur. I remember throwing a glass, which isn't like me. I remember his face, guilty, small. Like a cornered animal. He didn't deny it. He said it only happened once. After the bonfire, he said. She came out to the deck. We were both drinking, except he doesn't drink. Not really. He nurses one beer and then switches to seltzer. He'd made a point of it during our entire marriage. That night, I told him to pack a bag and leave. I didn't cry. I went numb. The next day, I drove to Salem to see my mom. I wanted someone to tell me I was right to feel betrayed. Instead, I got something else. Marcus, my older brother, was already there. He was sitting in Mom's kitchen, his feet up on the chair next to him, sipping coffee like he didn't just hear our family implode. "I always figured Ivy would pull something like this," he said, without looking up. "She always got what you couldn't." I stared at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus shrugged. "You were the responsible one. Ivy was the pretty one. You got the job, she got the attention. Always has." My mom entered like she was arriving at a brunch, not a funeral for my marriage. "She's scared," she said, speaking of Ivy. "She's overwhelmed." I didn't say anything. "She doesn't want to raise the baby alone," my mom continued. "Maybe you could help. Like a big sister. It could be healing, Rena." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to help raise the baby my husband made with my sister?" "She's family," she said gently. "And you've always wanted children." I had to leave. I didn't even finish my tea. I walked out of the house, shaking. That kind of betrayal doesn't come with a tidy reaction. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels hollow. Like your organs got replaced with wet towels. I filed for divorce a week later. People talk about heartbreak like it comes in waves. For me, it was a quiet, constant ache. A dull roar under everything. I'd find myself staring at my coffee machine in the morning, wondering if I was dreaming. I avoided mirrors for a long time. Ivy sent messages. She left voicemails. One day she dropped off a box of baby clothes at my doorstep, with a note that said, "I know you would have been a great mom." I never responded. I saw my therapist twice a week. I started running, though I hated it. Anything to keep moving. Then came the birth announcement. A tiny baby in a pale pink knit cap, eyes closed. No father's name. Just Ivy holding her, with a handwritten "Meet Calla" below. I threw it away. People told me I should forgive. That forgiveness is for me, not for them. But sometimes, forgiveness feels like asking the person bleeding on the floor to clean up the mess. I needed distance more than I needed closure. And now, I'm somewhere between survival and peace. I took a long leave from work after everything came crashing down. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the quiet judgment from people who knew. The way my coworkers looked at me like I was fragile glass. Or how my neighbor, who used to wave at me every morning, suddenly stopped making eye contact, as if heartbreak were contagious. I moved out of our house in Selwood and rented a duplex in the Hawthorne district, older, smaller, but it had light. I found comfort in the creaky wood floors and the slow drip of the faucet I never quite got around to fixing. It felt honest. Honest in a way nothing else did at the time. I remember sitting cross-legged on my new living room floor one night, eating Thai food straight from the container, when it hit me, I had spent a decade building a life that someone else had quietly dismantled behind my back. I started going to a divorce support group. I thought it would be awkward and full of forced tears, but it was mostly middle-aged women like me. Women who'd given the best years of their lives to people who didn't deserve them. One woman, her name was Petra, said something I'll never forget. She said, "Sometimes it's not just about who broke your heart. It's about how many people stood there and watched it happen." That stuck with me. Because that was exactly it. It wasn't just Darren. It was Ivy, of course. But it was also Marcus, who treated my pain like a punchline. And it was my own mother, who seemed more concerned about how it would look if I made a scene than about the reality of what had happened to me. My whole life, I had been the fixer. The quiet one. The one who made space for everyone else's chaos. I'd let Ivy interrupt conversations and steal credit and charm her way through life while I picked up the messes she left behind. I even loaned her money 3 years ago when she said she wanted to open her own yoga studio. She never opened it. Never paid me back either. Now she had taken something from me I could never get back, trust. About a month after Calla was born, Ivy showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her since that phone call. She looked different, drawn, pale, thinner. Not in a glamorous way, in a life that has wrung me out like a dishcloth kind of way. She was holding the baby in one of those soft carriers strapped to her chest. I didn't invite her in. I just stood in the doorway. "I just wanted you to see her," she said. I thought maybe it would help. I didn't look at the baby. I looked at Ivy. "You should go," I said quietly. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, then nodded and left. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I closed the door and leaned against it until my knees gave out. There are no rules for how you're supposed to feel when someone you love does something unforgivable. People assume it's rage or grief. But sometimes it's just this low-grade sickness. Like your insides are coated in ash. Like joy's been banned from your body. In the weeks that followed, my mom kept calling. She'd leave voicemails that sounded increasingly like PR pitches. "She's trying, Rena. You're stronger than this. We need to come together as a family." She used that line a lot, as a family. I wanted to scream. What family? The one that laughed at me? Betrayed me? Expected me to raise the result of their betrayal like some kind of karmic babysitter? It all felt like gaslighting on a cosmic level. I stopped answering her calls. Around the same time, Darren emailed me. He said he'd moved to Scottsdale for a job offer. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he hoped one day we could speak. He attached a photo of the dog we used to foster together. I deleted the email. You can't fix what someone else broke because they didn't value it. Instead, I started pouring myself into small things. I painted the hallway of my duplex a deep green, even though it made the space look darker. I took pottery classes. I burned old journals. I planted herbs in little mismatched pots on the window ledge. I started therapy again, this time not to process the trauma, but to figure out who I was when I wasn't someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's emotional crutch. I never planned to be alone at 38. I never planned to start over. But here I was. One afternoon, months after the dust had mostly settled, I ran into Marcus at a grocery store in Salem. I was grabbing a few things before visiting an old friend nearby. He spotted me near the apples and called my name like we were close. I turned slowly, not sure how I wanted to handle it. He walked up, hands in his pockets, rocking on his heels the way he did when he was nervous as a kid. "Hey," he said. "You look good." I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Still, I said nothing. I was cruel. What I said, back then. About Ivy. That was wrong. There was a long pause. I looked at the Granny Smith apples. They were bright, too perfect. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally said. "But I'm not interested in pretending everything's okay." He nodded. "I get it." And then he walked away. That was the most closure I ever got from anyone in my family. But weirdly, it was enough. Not because I forgave him or wanted him back in my life, but because I finally saw them all for who they were. They weren't cruel in the movie villain kind of way. They were just selfish. Weak. And I had spent most of my life expecting people to be better than they were capable of being. Now, I just expected them to be what they'd already shown me. Ivy kept posting pictures of Kala on social media. I muted her account. My mom still sends birthday cards. I don't open them anymore. I keep them in a drawer, unopened, like little capsules of disappointment I'll never bother unsealing. I stopped asking why. There's no why. Sometimes people choose themselves at your expense. Sometimes they don't think twice about it. And sometimes, healing isn't a light switch. It's 1,000 small decisions not to let it ruin you. A few weeks after running into Marcus, I got an invitation in the mail, an actual paper envelope, handwritten in Ivy's unmistakable curly script. I almost tossed it in the trash without opening it. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside was an invitation to Kala's first birthday party. It was at a local park in Eugene where Ivy now lived full-time. "Just a small gathering," the card read. "No pressure. We'd love to see you." She'd drawn a tiny heart beside her name. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted to go, but because I couldn't believe the sheer audacity. After a year of silence, after a betrayal that I still carried like an ache in my chest every morning, she really thought a cupcake and sunshine could soften it. I didn't RSVP. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, but 2 days before the party, my mom called. "Rena," she said, "she's trying to make amends. You're being very cold." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. "She made a mistake," she continued. "But Kala is innocent. Are you really going to punish a baby for what her parents did?" "She's not my responsibility," I said flatly. "But you're her aunt." "I don't want to be her aunt," I snapped. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't volunteer to raise the fallout from someone else's betrayal." My mother got quiet. "I raised 3 children on my own," she finally said. "I thought you had more grace than this." The call ended shortly after. I stood there for a long time, phone still in hand, wondering how I could be made to feel like the villain in a story where I'd done nothing wrong. And yet that's what happens in families sometimes. The person who finally says enough gets painted as the problem. I didn't go to the party. I didn't send a gift. I didn't call. I spent the day walking along the East Bank Esplanade, earbuds in, letting the sound of the river and the occasional cyclist drown out the parts of me that still wanted to explain myself. Because the truth was, I had nothing left to explain. People like my mom didn't want understanding. They wanted compliance. That was never going to happen again. But that didn't mean it still didn't hurt. Healing, I've learned, isn't linear. It's not a path you walk forward on with a clear end. It's a spiral. One day you feel okay, even strong. The next you're crying in the shower because you saw a father holding his daughter's hand at the grocery store and remembered you wanted that once. And now the idea of having a child is so tangled up with betrayal that you can't even imagine going down that road again. I tried dating again. Once. A friend from my pottery class set me up with a man named Charles. He was a quiet man in his early 40s who worked in publishing and liked old jazz records. We had dinner at a little Italian restaurant near Division Street. He was kind. Asked questions. Didn't talk about himself the whole time. When he asked about my previous marriage, I gave the vague, "it ended badly" line that usually wards people off. Charles didn't push. But as the waiter cleared our plates and brought the check, he smiled and said, "So what are you hoping for now?" It was an innocent question. But my mind immediately flooded with images I didn't want: Darren and Ivy on that deck in Cannon Beach. The phone call. Marcus laughing. My mother asking me to help raise their child like it was some twisted act of grace. I froze. And then I smiled politely and said, "I'm just trying to breathe right now." That was the only date. I didn't ghost him, but I didn't follow up either. I wasn't ready. I still felt like parts of me were too sharp to touch. The funny thing is, people kept telling me I was doing the right thing, cutting off toxic families, reclaiming my life, setting boundaries. And yet somehow, every time I enforced those boundaries, I ended up alone in a quiet house, wondering if I'd overcorrected. But then I'd remember the version of me from a year ago, planning that beach trip, trying so hard to be the glue that held everyone together. That woman doesn't exist anymore. And I don't think she should come back. Ivy still texts every few months. Nothing heavy. Just photos of Kala, sometimes a vague "thinking of you." I never respond. I don't block her either. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I want her to know I see it. That I see the attempts, and I'm choosing not to pick up the rope. Because she dropped it first. Last week, I ran into an old colleague at a conference. She hadn't heard about the divorce. When I told her a condensed version of what happened, she put her hand on my arm and said, "That sounds impossible." And I nodded. Because it was. And yet here I am. Still standing. One thing that surprised me the most about betrayal is how long it echoes. You expect the initial pain, those raw, sleepless nights, the obsessive replays in your head, the texts you type and delete. But what no one tells you is how the grief lingers in the mundane. It shows up when you're folding laundry. When you pass a bakery you used to go to together. When you hear a baby cry in a store and your body instinctively tightens, like it remembers something your mind tries to forget. It had been over a year since Darren left. Almost a year and a half since Ivy called with her quiet confession that turned my life inside out. People had stopped asking how I was. I think they assumed I had moved on. I hadn't. But I was quieter about it. Grief had gone from a house fire to a low-burning candle. Still there. Still flickering. But contained. In that time, my life had changed in strange little ways. I no longer made 2 cups of coffee in the morning. I took the long way home from work just to avoid driving by our old house. I rearranged my bookshelves 3 times, because the order they were in reminded me of how Darren used to tease me for alphabetizing fiction and organizing nonfiction by subject. He always mixed them up when he dusted, his one act of subtle rebellion in our very organized life. Even those memories had started to feel like someone else's story. One afternoon, while I was sorting through a stack of mail on the counter, I came across a card in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a note from a woman named Jocelyn, an old high school friend of Ivy's. We hadn't spoken in years. She wrote, "I debated reaching out, but I just wanted you to know. Ivy told me everything. I don't know what I expected, but I'm still shocked. You didn't deserve that. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I stared at the card for a while. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone, anyone, to say those exact words, "You didn't deserve that." Because for so long, it felt like no one in my family was capable of saying it. To them, it was just a situation, something unfortunate. Something they wanted to smooth over and sweep aside, not something that needed to be acknowledged or atoned for. I didn't call Jocelyn. But I kept the card. I slid it into the back of my journal like a tiny bandage. A few weeks later, I got another text from Ivy. This time, there was no photo attached. Just 3 words, "I miss you." I stared at it, phone resting on the arm of the couch, like the weight of the message might tip the whole thing over. I thought about writing back. Not something forgiving or warm. Just something. A sentence. A question. A knife. But I didn't. I let it sit there. I watched it become marked as read. And I didn't reply. Later that evening, my mom called. Ivy said she reached out, she said, skipping any greeting. She did. Well, what? She's trying, Rena. She's reaching out. And you're still cold. I clenched my jaw. You want me to forgive her because she's trying? That's the bar now? My mom sighed like I was the exhausting one. I just think maybe enough time has passed. It's been almost 2 years. Families go through things. But we will find a way back. I was silent for a moment. We didn't go through something, I said, my voice shaking. They did something to me. And you want me to pretend it was a storm we all weathered together? It wasn't. It was an ambush. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. I could hear her exhale on the other end, like I was wearing her patience thin. I don't want to fight, she said. We're not fighting, I replied. We're just, finally telling the truth. She didn't call again for a while. Instead, I kept on living my quiet little life. I found strange comfort in routine. I started volunteering at a literacy center on Saturdays. I planted tomatoes in the spring. I taught myself to make sourdough, even though I'd once mocked people who did it. It was a quiet, small life. But it was mine. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I normally don't answer those, but something told me to pick it up. Hello? Rena? It was a woman's voice. Nervous. It's Jocelyn. I blinked. Hi. I hope it's okay that I called. There's something I thought you should know. My stomach tightened. Okay, Ivy's been having a rough time. She's overwhelmed. She's been saying things like she's all alone and no one supports her, and I wanted to say something because I don't think it's fair. What's not fair? She keeps acting like she's the victim in all this, Jocelyn said quietly. And I think part of her believes it. She's still waiting for you to fix it. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course she is. Jocelyn paused. I don't know if this helps at all. But I believe you. And I don't think you should carry any of this guilt. You did everything you could. It did help. More than I expected. After we hung up, I sat on my porch, watching the evening light stretch across the sidewalk. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that felt earned, not empty. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who held it all together. The one who planned beach weekends to make everyone feel included. The one who tried so hard to be a daughter, a sister, a wife, and never once asked what she needed in return. That version of me was gone. What remained was someone slower. More cautious. But stronger in the quietest ways. Someone who, for the first time in her life, was learning how to choose herself. A few months after Jocelyn's call, I started receiving packages addressed to me but with no return label. At first, I thought they were mistakes. The first was a hand-thrown ceramic mug, light blue, delicate, beautiful. The second, a used copy of a book I once loved in college, The Bell Jar, with a note stuck between the pages that simply said, "You always understood the quiet things." The third was a print of a painting I had once admired at a local gallery, abstract, textured, and haunting. That's when I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I texted Jocelyn, thinking maybe she was behind it, but she denied it, swearing she hadn't sent anything. Eventually, I received a letter. This time, it was signed. It was from Darren. He said he'd been in therapy, that he'd only recently understood the depths of what he'd done. Ivy had been calling him selfish for leaving her alone with a baby when he'd promised to make it work, but he'd finally realized the only person he'd betrayed more than her was me. There was no plea for forgiveness. He said he didn't expect anything from me. Just that he wanted to be the kind of man who didn't ruin the next person's life the way he ruined mine. I read it once, slowly, and never read it again. I threw it in a drawer. I didn't need it. But the part that got to me most? He wrote, if I could go back to that weekend, I wouldn't have stayed on that deck. I would have come inside with you, when you asked me to come stargazing. I thought I had time to make things right. But sometimes we run out of time. I never wrote him back. I didn't need to. He was living with his own consequences now, emotionally responsible for a woman who didn't want a partner, but a savior. That was punishment enough. As for Ivy, well, She showed up to my work one afternoon. I had just finished a project and was heading out for coffee. I saw her standing near the elevators, her hair longer than before, holding a small folder. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. I have something for you." I didn't say anything. She handed me the folder. Inside were sketches, building designs, rough drafts. My old ones. Ones I'd done before the divorce, before everything. Darren had kept them. Apparently, she found them when she was cleaning out his things after he officially moved to Arizona. "I thought you should have them," she said. "I didn't know he saved them." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't glowing or magnetic or effortlessly charming like she always used to be. She was tired. A little thinner. Older in a way that had nothing to do with time. "Ivy," I said slowly, "you've already taken enough from me. You don't get to come back now because you're tired of sitting with the consequences." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to fix it." "You can't," I said. "And you don't get to." She didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes glossy, and left. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Because I realized then that revenge doesn't have to be fire and fury. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's indifference. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is living a life that's so completely your own, it no longer includes the people who broke you. Months passed. Then a year. I published a small collection of architectural essays with personal reflections on space, light, and healing. It got picked up by a small press. I started teaching a workshop twice a week at a community college, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I bought a little fixer-upper on the edge of Portland, close to the Columbia River Gorge. It had a crooked fence and bad plumbing, but it was mine. I started fixing it with my own 2 hands, stripping paint, redoing cabinets, learning what it meant to build something stable again. I even started seeing someone new. Not someone dramatic or showy. His name was Andre. He owned a used bookstore and had a calm energy that made the world feel less jagged. I told him the truth about my past, not all at once, but piece by piece, like letting light into a room. He didn't flinch. He didn't run. One day, while sipping wine on my porch, I got a text from Marcus. It just said, "Mom finally apologized." I didn't reply. Because it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't holding on to anything. I was just done. And that, I think, is the most satisfying revenge of all. To no longer need them. To no longer be shaped by their absence or their presence. To be whole. On your own. And to never, ever again be the one left holding the weight of someone else's choices.